Hi, this is Tamsen Granger.
And this is Dan Abuhoff.
With Tamsen and Dan read the paper back in Block Island for another podcast. And we have special guests here today. We have Granger Abuhoff.
Hello.
And Nico Jasbon.
Hola.
Who have joined us here on the island for some fun in the sun. And it is sunny.
It is sunny. The date, by the way, is Monday, July 27th?
It's the 27th, yeah.
Right. And even though Granger and Nico have been here only for really 2 days, they, according to our conversation earlier, feel like they've been here for weeks.
Yes. I feel like I live at this island. I was born in this island.
We've been here before, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the nature of a good vacation. Like, you feel completely, enmeshed in what's going on in the vacation destination after a relatively short time. And that's what Block Island is. It's an island, and it's completely enveloping and completely different from what I'll call the real world. And as Tamsen said, it's been beautiful here.
It's been beautiful. We've been coming here many, many years, more than 30 years. And it's a little island somewhere in the water between Connecticut and Long Island, right?
Yes.
And as far as we can tell, we're completely, you can see the mainland from here, but it doesn't feel like the mainland is anywhere within our range. We don't have internet. We don't have phone service. We are really glamping out.
Right. And it's its own little economy, its own little thing. And, the internet is funny. It's one of the characteristics of the island you get used to as a regular visitor. And every year there's talk about how they're going to improve the internet and become part of the real world and give up what they call horse and buggy technology because they rely on DSL, which doesn't really work. And that's become a little bit of an issue here on the island. Number one, we prepare because we know we're not going to have internet. So you were saying, Nico, earlier that you made a list of things you got to bring or you want to bring because you don't have internet.
Yes.
Such as? What's your advice?
So I think if you go to an island and there's going to be no internet, you should bring a little travel-size radio. Dan brings it, and it's a lot of fun.
It's actually fantastic. It's a $9 radio. It's about 2 inches long. It's an amazing thing.
It's also very cute.
Analog.
Yeah,
it's cute. Yes, that's why I picked it.
And you should for sure download your podcast and your music before you get there, because if you don't want to listen to the same playlist every day, maybe download some more.
Right.
And then finally, you want to bring some books. I brought some books from our neighbors, and we had 4 books to bring while we're here, so I'm reading that.
Yeah.
All right, so you're prepared. But, as I showed Granger before, the issue of whether Block Island finally is going to get to what they call the 21st century and have internet is now a raging issue on the island. As I think it's been an issue in previous years, hasn't it? Don't they talk about this every year?
Yeah, so I read a very similar article with a similar debate last year. So they were kind of opening up the process for comment last year, and I guess this year they're going to either approve or reject a proposal for fiber optic cable being laid, in connection with the island. And this one guy was saying, you know what, maybe there's some solution through the air, maybe something like Elon Musk's idea, and that's not terribly specific, so I think they're going to go with the, broadband line into the island.
They did not mention the balloon idea?
Yes, we mentioned in a previous podcast you can have a balloon that provides internet, as they're doing in some places.
We're not sure which balloon.
Kenya has one of those.
Yeah,
but it's a normal discussion about technology. I think your brother Bryce, who's coming later, said it best when he said, the funny thing about technology, the train's moving along, and you got to decide when you're getting on the train. It's always, if you wait, it's going to be nicer, but if you wait, you don't get on the train. So do you jump on now, or do you wait a couple of years and hope for G5 or whatever it's called?
Well, that's the funny thing, because when Bryce brought the first digital camera I ever seen, it could store 14 pictures. So sometimes you wait.
Yeah, but what about the idea that you come to get away from technology?
Well, you do, but for us, whatever works for us. I think we make the best of it, and there's something to that. But for people who live on the island, they need internet. It's kind of bizarre. The letters that Granger mentioned, the first letter says, "Here's 8 reasons why internet can be useful." Literally says that, and it says the grandparents can talk to their grandchildren and say, And say to yourself, there's got to be more than 8 reasons. There's got to be more than 8 things.
Yeah, yeah.
So you need it.
But anyway, and we're doing very well with actual books,
Yes, and
among other things.
and conversations.
Yeah, and so thank you, Dixon, for that. But it is nice coming back to the same place. We come back every year, and we find ourselves having all kinds of interesting adventures, some of them recurring. We've had some good beach adventures. Last week, there was a horse on the beach.
There was a horse on the beach. Well, there was a guy riding a horse on the beach.
Right. All of a sudden, behind us comes galloping at a safe distance, a safe social distance, a horse behind us,
Right.
and which then turned
Yes.
and zoomed into the surf.
Into the water. Yeah, and just to be clear about this was a crowded beach. I mean, this guy was on the periphery. He was on the edge. He wasn't wending his way through the picnickers, but he was, really motoring on this horse, galloping on a crowded beach, and
So
then
that
found
was
a way,
fun.
went into the water. Yes, it was fun.
And we've also been watching seagulls steal mini muffins
Yeah.
from unsuspecting children.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll teach them
While the
something.
children are in the water, seagulls prancing up, grabbing a bag,
Yeah.
and, searching through the bag to get the muffins.
It's amazing the way the seagulls unwrap those sealed bags. It's a fantastic thing to watch. They're geniuses.
And we also had a guy who walked up fully dressed, shoes, shorts, belt, shirt,
Oh, yeah.
sunglasses,
Yeah.
the works, with a fantastic dog, a standard poodle. And he stopped near us, took off his shirt, took off his shoes,
Yeah,
took
took
off
off his
his
shoes.
glasses, took off his watch, set everything down. The dog went to visit some other group, and he just went right in the water.
Yeah, no, nothing's terribly weird about that except for the leather belt.
Why would you sacrifice your leather belt?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you at least take it off?
Yeah, I don't understand that.
So we've had those kind of adventures, and of course, we have a couple of characters we watch for on a regular basis, like particular little old ladies who come to the beach right about 5:30 p.m., chat for a while, dunk in the water, and then leave.
Yeah.
And
Well, there's
they're
2 of them
still
in
there.
particular.
They're
Two of-
still there.
You're not looking for a category. You're looking for 2 particular women.
Right.
Yeah.
And we slyly photograph them to make sure we've got the right people.
Yes, and so now the police have confirmed that those are the suspects, and they'll be approached at the right time.
So this is the kind of low-key adventures
Yeah, right.
we are having.
That's right.
Okay.
Low-key
And
adventures.
people watching.
Yeah, we're eating very well. There's still COVID, and yet Block Island's a place where very often you're eating at home, more often than not. And Tamsen is doing a lot of the cooking. Nico helps. We've had wonderful meals once in a while. I've been to the majority, and we do go out for dinner. Maybe we'll do that tonight. And there's a lot of outdoor dining alternatives, so that doesn't really cramp your style too very much. So
Do you feel it's different at all from other years?
No, I think
Without the COVID restrictions?
you can't. The first thing you look at it, are people here or aren't they? And I can't count noses well enough to say whether this is 80% or 120%. It looks to me about the same, honestly, as it's been previous years. There
What about
people
you guys?
here.
Does it seem as busy?
Yeah, we were in downtown. It does seem pretty busy down there still. It seems like there's still a lot of young people, a lot of families, a lot of people in the shops.
I wonder about the hotels and the restaurants. It's a little tougher to tell. If they're getting the same business, like, is it more a day trip business?
What did you think? Did you go in some shops?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the shops were weird. I thought the shops seemed to have low inventory, and if anything, looked like they had pretty much what was left over from last year, almost.
Oh, yeah. I was in a lot of touristy shops, so I always think they have around the same things.
Every year
Every
anyway.
year,
But
anyways, yeah.
it seemed unimpressive, but maybe that's just
Yeah, that's just the
the
way
way
it
things
is.
are.
It's not the place for shopping. I mean, you find some odd Block Island paraphernalia, but
All right, but so that's the word from Block Island. And by the way, we're getting all this information about the internet, etc., because Block Island has an actual newspaper. Okay, so
It's $1.
we're
Block
gleaning.
Island Times.
Yeah, Block Island Times,
Block Island
and
Times.
we've been gleaning our coverage, internet coverage, etc., from that. Also available on the internet if you have internet.
if you have it, next year.
Okay.
And by the way, that new program, if they do it, well, next time we come back next year, we'll have internet. So
We'll see.
That quick?
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see is right.
We'll
this
see.
this could be our last deserted island trip.
I think we say that every year.
Yeah.
So so
COVID, the world of COVID.
yeah.
And here, this was really weird, but really interesting, and maybe even important, right?
Right. So, doctors wondered, says the article in the New York Times, where are the preemies?
And as I said to Tamsen when I read the article, it looks like because of COVID, there are no more premium babies. And Tamsen immediately said, I don't think you mean premium babies, sweetheart. I think you mean premature births. And it turns out Tamsen was right. That is what the article is about.
Okay, so in at least some countries, Denmark, where else?
A lot of countries.
Denmark and
Denmark is one of the leaders here.
Calgary in
In
Canada.
Canada, right?
Premature births are down dramatically, like 80%, 50%, etc.
90% in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, that's
Okay.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, which is unbelievable. They have these units, which are called NCIU, which were set up to take care of premium children.
NICU.
NICU, yeah.
Yeah, they're empty. As a matter of fact, the way this article comes about, they talk about a doctor in Ireland who had entered lockdown on March 12th. He returned to work in late March and said, wait a second, I don't see any orders here in the hospital for breast milk-based fortifier, the fortifier that doctors feed to the tiniest preemies. And they said they hadn't ordered any because there were no tiny preemies. And he going, what? There's got to be some mistake.
All right, so what do they say is the reason people are not having premature births?
They don't know. They give some theories. They throw them out. They say, first of all, they've never been clear at what causes premature births. It's part of the problem. And then they throw out some ideas. And the ideas are maybe people are getting more rest. Maybe they're getting support of the family because everybody's home. They say, well, it could be lower air pollution. And then the Times on its own says, well, the one thing that's crazy is it can't be less stress because we all know we're all feeling more stress with COVID, so that's wrong. Well, the Times might not really have the facts on that.
Yeah.
So who really knows?
Also, might be different in Australia.
Yeah, it might be different in Australia. Well, look, it's down 20% in the U.S. too, in the one person they spoke to. So it's down all over, and they say they're going to investigate and do studies. It is, we've referred to this in previous podcasts, a so-called natural experiment.
Yeah.
When you have an exogenous set of variables that are imposed on a society and things come out differently, and since we've never understood what causes preemies to begin with, there's got to be a clue into there about what's going on.
So on the point of maybe the mothers are getting more rest,
Yeah.
okay, one of their ideas is maybe we will end up recommending that maternity leave start before the birth. As opposed to after.
Maybe, I
and
don't
that
know.
may contribute to healthier births. Anyway, the Dr. Christensen, who's quoted here, says, for years, nothing has advanced in this very important area, understanding premature births at all. And it seems it took a virus attack to help us get on track.
Well, I'll tell you the one thing that you don't even get to, you're going to reject this immediately, but I'm sure there are fewer doctor visits in COVID. And they do talk about one specific situation where sometimes premium births. Premium births. I keep saying it. Premature births, are encouraged or brought about because of high blood pressure, and because doctors say your blood pressure is high, let's do this. Well, that's not happening. So maybe that was a false move to begin with. I don't know, but in any event.
So you're saying the mother may have high blood pressure, but doesn't know it because she hasn't been to the doctor.
Exactly.
And nobody's inducing labor.
And maybe it's not a great idea to induce labor. We learned. Who knows?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Dan.
That's fine.
For that.
I give you that free of charge. Gratis.
Okay. All right. Moving right along. Oh, it's me again.
Well, it's because you're dominating here, Tamsen. You're the one who knows what's going on in the main.
Another COVID story. Listen, you know what? We're running out of stories here because of this COVID stuff.
These are
You
extra
realize that?
stories. These
No,
are new
every story's about COVID.
I know, but I mean, we're just the times gets worse and worse in this regard.
Yes,
There's
well,
nothing to write about.
They write about two things. One of them is COVID. The other
I
is
mean,
the
they
election.
recently wrote an article that was really awful that we're not covering about how to say no when people ask you to do favors.
Right.
Because it may be dangerous.
Right.
But
But in the Times style, not that it is dangerous, but because it may be dangerous.
And they actually said, somebody wrote an article saying, it's not, in this particular time, doing something like watering the plants in a garden for a neighbor may not be as safe as it used to. What the frick are they talking about? How is there any risk associated with turning on a faucet in somebody's yard to water their plants while they're away?
It's that's their approach.
These are the people they have writing for them now.
Well,
that's ridiculous.
Actually, I think it's consistent with their
I don't
message.
care whether you're for helping your neighbors or against, but the idea that it's risky to turn on a sprinkler in a neighbor's yard is just bizarre.
All right. Well,
neighbor's not even there.
I agree with you, but that's the Times line.
All right, so
they have their own agenda.
Even so, we're forging ahead.
Yes.
Reading
Get
these
to the
stupid
story.
articles.
This is another critical article.
This one is kind of fun, and that is it turns out, with the pandemic, the world has gotten quieter.
Yes.
They're measuring this with, what do you call them?
Seismographs.
Seismographs.
Yes.
Okay? Seismographs measure vibrations. Well, it can be from Mother Earth jiggling about.
Right.
Or it can be from cars and trucks and construction and, human activity.
Heavy traffic, football games, rock concerts, fireworks, subways, mine explosions, rock drilling, all kinds of man-made activity.
Apparently, there's
down.
a drop of up to 50%.
Yeah.
That's huge.
They're not getting these vibrations.
Maybe that's why the babies aren't being born.
Well, that's why
They're sleeping soundly.
You're thinking about what
in mommy's tummy.
This is why I set these articles up this way. This is the clue. There are other clues in this podcast as to what's going on. But there's one later in the podcast I'll tell you about. But that's weird. It's quieter. It's not a surprise, and it makes a big difference. But I also want to note that the headline of the article: with shutdowns, a kind of hush spans the globe. Do you remember that phrase, a kind of hush?
There's a kind of hush all over the world
That's
tonight.
correct. That's a rock song by Herman's Hermits.
Ooh.
Thank you. All right. The next article, which is also scientific related. Go ahead. Right here.
Yeah. I don't want to say much about this. It's an article, about Viking age smallpox. Okay? They thought smallpox started in about the 17th century. The most ancient remains that they have evidence from, Lithuanian child or something, is from the 17th century. Okay, so they thought that's when smallpox started, but they dug up some Vikings who are even older, 1,000 years older, and they seem to have had smallpox too. A slightly different smallpox,
But
smallpox. Okay.
All right.
So I don't know why we even care about this.
Can I tell you why we care?
Why do we care?
Then I'll get to your point, which I know you have another point, which is useful. I'd say, first of all, when you think about what's going on, about they're trying to identify when the COVID virus started, okay? Was it in March? Was it in February? Was it in December? And did it get there from China? Did it get there from Europe? And people are impatient about it. They can't quite nail this down. Well, this question about smallpox, they were 1,000 years off. 1,000 years off. And we're asking that they identified the COVID. What week in winter did it actually come on New York shores? Well, guess what? They're not going to figure that out.
They are going to figure that out. If they analyze enough wastewater,
Well, there is that, but
they are going to figure that out.
That would be the best clue. But the fact of the matter is, this gives them coverage on that. Cover on that.
All right. 1,000 years from now, we'll know exactly when this started.
I think that's about when
saying?
we'll nail it down.
But the interesting thing to me was, when we talk about all these vaccines,
Yeah.
and we were chatting the other day, saying, why don't, when I was growing up, everybody had a scar from the smallpox
Right.
vaccine.
I did too.
And I said, why did that stop? And it turns out by 1980, smallpox was completely eradicated from humans.
You don't have it. I don't think mine exists anymore. I don't know.
But everybody
right
saw
here on
had
your
this
shoulder.
little star on the left shoulder.
Oh, you have it here then.
Do I have it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My mom has one too.
Oh, my God. Look at that.
Yeah.
There's a lawsuit in that.
So,
right.
that's just a sign of our age, dear.
Hey, is it really?
Yes.
I feel better.
Some people in this room were not born by 1980.
I'm familiar with vaccinations. That's going to come in handy, believe me. All right. So then, in terms of getting back to normal, let's talk about getting back to normal post-COVID. So there was an article about exercise. Now, we've been getting fantastic exercise on Block Island.
Fantastic.
Yes, Tamsen and I, biking, swimming. You guys, every once in a while, you go up a flight of stairs. I don't know what you're doing, but running maybe, lifting maybe.
A little swimming.
A little swimming. Yeah, look, let's face it. We're killing ourselves on the island. Killing ourselves. Because that's what you do. That's what you do. But there was an article in the Journal about what it's going to take to get back to the gym. And Nico, you seem to be wavering on this. Maybe the article's useless. Is it useless? Does it tell you anything?
Well, I think it's kind of dated because it's talking about how we should make sure to sanitize all our surfaces and wear gloves when we work out. And then they're just trying to sell you like gloves and masks the whole time.
Well, that try to sell you is a theme in the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
It's called product placement.
Yeah,
they
they
tell you
get
exactly what to order.
They're
in.
trying to be funny though with their title. Their title of the article was "Do you even sanitize, bro?"
And that's a reference to what?
Oh, I didn't look him up.
Oh, God. Well, some YouTube thing. We don't need to know it. No one. You got the wrong demographic for that anyway. But I mean, seriously, just between the two of you, can you tell now? Do you have any view as to when you might get back into a gym? I know you go to Cornerstone or even the rowing studio. Is there any thought that there'll be trouble getting back in? Or
I think the biggest issue right now is the indoors versus outdoors. I think right now it's nice for us to be able to work outdoors and not have any worry about being too close to people. I'm not worried about touching things. I'm just worried about, being in a air-conditioned space with someone. Yeah. So I thought it was strange that they focused on making sure that you saran wrap your bars and your weights instead of...
That's not going to happen.
They said saran wrap.
Yeah, well,
and,
they always use the branded model. They don't use the off-brand. That's what I like about them.
But they didn't talk about the air conditioning issue at all. So
yeah, ventilation is probably going to be the key to get people back in if there's not going to be a vaccine.
Well, I think that Nico hit the nail on the head with the outdoors versus indoors distinction because... I'm very comfortable working out outdoors. I'm not sure if the businesses are going to really speed up opening up the indoor spaces. So even if I was interested in going back, the pools that I usually go to, the gyms I usually go to, they're not open right now.
Well, Cornerstone is open, which is the gym near us in Pennsylvania. But rumor has it that they're not drawing people.
But people don't work out as much indoors.
But some people do.
In the summer.
In the summer, right?
And the other thing, the Cornerstone is they're about classes. And people are not going to indoor classes now. You're not going to get 30 people in a yoga room. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So we'll just see it play out. But, well, the other thing that's coming on in sports is we talked last week about baseball getting back online. And now basketball is getting back online in just a few days, I think, right? Or maybe this next weekend?
Yeah, so this coming weekend, they're going to start the first official games. These games are called the placement games. So it's supposed to be the end of the regular season. The NBA is taking 22 teams, having them play some games for seeding purposes, giving a chance to the teams that are out of the playoffs by about 5 games to get close enough to have these play-in games where they'll give advantage to the teams that have the better position. And then from there, it'll be a fairly conventional playoff format, except for the fact they're all playing on the same indoor courts in Orlando. And
the bubble.
The bubble. The funny thing is the NBA players have been caught several times breaking the bubble.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Lou Williams, who is famous and infamous for various things, got caught at a strip club during an excused absence.
Really?
And he says he was just picking up food. Yeah, there's another guy who was caught getting food from a non-approved restaurant. So they're allowed to get restaurants from the resort to deliver to them, but not from outside the resort. And this guy really wanted fried chicken delivered from Miami, so he got busted. And he had to do a 4-day quarantine after that. There've been some players who tested positive after leaving for family reasons, like Zion Williamson left, and he's gonna come back. He's supposed to play on the opening night, but they're a little bit undecided, I guess, as to whether or not he plays, even though he's been testing negative while he was away.
Yeah.
Basically, the NBA seems pretty on top of it, and they're not hesitating so far to embarrass some of the players publicly when they break the rules.
Oh, really?
Well, the Lou Williams thing, and
Lou Williams has embarrassed himself many times in the past. It's not really new news. But.
Did all these guys quarantine 14 days before they got to this resort? Was that the idea?
So what they do is they have the guys test. They don't have to quarantine exactly for 14 days, hang in, but they have to test negative twice in quick succession, and then they come in. And then once they come in, if they've had the 2 negative tests, they do a 4-day quarantine on top of that after testing negative. and I think they get tested during that period as well.
That's a lot of tests.
Yeah, and then they come back in.
Well, the funny thing is that unlike your experience, I know you guys had testing recently for your water polo event, and it took, what did it take, 10 days to get the results?
About 10 days.
Yeah, about 10 days. Yeah.
The NBA, and by the way, just so we all know, that's useless.
Yeah.
The NBA, they take a test, they get the results that afternoon or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, so they're in a different world in a lot of ways. And I will also tell you from listening to talk radio, which of course Tamsen, your mother, listens with me to talk radio sports, loves it. And that's been a leitmotif that's been discussed for the last few weeks. The lack of female companionship in the bubble, because the bubble is something you might be in for 3 months. And they're not willing to get into more detail than that, but it's been a lot of snickering and laughing about that.
Well, what's going to happen is that once it gets down to a certain number of teams, so I think once they get to the conference semifinals, more than half the teams will have gone home by that point.
Right.
At that point, you're allowed to have, I think, 3 or 4 guests who, once they test negative. The idea is that those people will be replacing the players who have left.
Oh, that's a huge sigh of relief.
So people's families will join them.
Okay.
These guys have thought of everything.
Well, yes, except for Lou Williams. They haven't thought about him.
They thought about it.
They are. I was telling Mom the story that the first complaint they had was there was a guy who was complaining that there was a lot of noise from the room above his, and they sent someone to investigate. It turns out one of the players was dribbling a basketball and doing drills in the hotel room above this guy. One guess who that player was. There's no way you'll get it, but I'll give you a chance if you want to throw a name out. Worked himself to a huge lather and was bothering the person below.
Chris Paul?
Close. Jimmy Butler. How's that?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So,
he's annoying.
yeah. Well, here's something that's caught my eye in the Olympics, but you guys will get it. And I think it's clear you're going to get it. You know, about who's won the most gold medals. And when I threw that out, Nico immediately said
Michael Phelps,
and that's correct. But here's what the reason I'm even mentioning it, because of course I'm familiar with Michael Phelps too, and you know it's going to be a swimmer because the swimmers really of all these events and they have a chance for medals. But the spots 2, 3, and 4 for the U.S. are female swimmers. You're familiar with Natalie Coughlin and Dara Torres probably. Jenny Thompson is years before that. Mm-hmm. Jenny Thompson's the one who's second. She has 8 gold medals. Do you know how many gold medals Michael Phelps won? Because this is what stunned me, and maybe I should know that.
I saw the
Okay,
graphic.
Nico, do you have any idea?
16?
23.
Wow.
23. Second place is 8.
Because he was on a lot of relays as well.
You know something? So was Jenny Thompson. So,
no, but that 1 year he went 8 for 8, remember, on the gold
Yeah.
medal?
Yes.
That'll jump you up a level.
I just lost sight of that. All right, here's something. Here I said there's getting into things going on, and maybe that might explain happenings or maybe new concerns. UFOs.
I want to believe.
Yeah, you want to believe. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But here's what's weird, okay? It turns out that guess who's been monitoring UFO-type activity for years, and that's been through a secret agency and is now becoming transparent about it. You'll never guess.
The U.S. government.
NASA.
That's right. The United States of America. They have a program called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force. But it's not that they just established it. They had it. They changed the name every few years. But it's been going on for years and years. They say that there was some rumor that they quit funding in 2012, but they didn't really. And they've continued on, and they have all this data and all this stuff. I mean, it's like X-Files. It turns out they're really looking at it. And it's not like it's 3 guys in a broom closet who are like, checking out with a telescope at night. No. It turns out that the program in 2012 was funded with $22 million.
Oh, my God.
$22 million they've been spending every year. It might not be wasted money.
The Defense Department, that's like nothing now.
Yeah, it might not. And of course, they have no less a luminary than Harry Reid, who was the former Senate Majority Leader, a big figure, a senator from Nevada. The equivalent of Mitch McConnell, basically, until a few years ago. He's leading the charge. He's still involved in it. And they quote Mr. Reid. He says the former Democrat from Nevada pushed for funding. He believed that crashes of vehicles from other worlds had occurred and retrieved materials. And they've retrieved materials that have been studied for decades and are now being held by aerospace companies with government contracts that came from other worlds. Harry Reid. So I would think this would be a bigger story than it is. It's kind of buried in the paper. I don't know. I would say that if we discovered that there were UFOs and they were on the way, people would stop talking about COVID. Who knows? But is that weird, or is it my imagination?
I think it'd be a bigger deal if the other two stories weren't happening. I also think that I've heard people complain that there's a slow release from the Times of these features about this topic, and people just want to see a convincing video.
Well, they're not saying that there are UFOs. That's not the story. Isn't that there are UFOs? The story is that the government's seen fit to spend $20 million a year studying this thing and have all this information, and that would suggest to you that they've come up with something. That they've got something in the files, that there's something to get. Harry Reid wasn't a nutcase. So I don't know. This is to be continued. But
is this supported by somebody in particular who is trying to get funds for his...
They've got the funds. They've got the funds. It's supported as much by Harry Reid, by anybody who was involved with it for years and is still involved.
When did it start?
It started before 2012. They don't even know because it was a secret program.
Well, there's a TV show that was very popular in the 90s where that phrase came from, I want to believe, and that was the X-Files.
Yeah,
and that popularized people's view of the government secretly studying this stuff. So,
and you know, you think they said, "Hey, that's an idea."
It's either that or just the show was like way more accurate than I thought. Shout out to Fox Mulder.
I think David Duchovny is our next contact. See what David has to say about it.
Well, as Trevor Noah said, scientists should get back to work, solve the COVID thing first. Then you can do your silly stuff about space and UFOs, all right? You gotta, eat your vegetables, okay? Then you get dessert.
If I was the aliens, I'd stay away for now. Wait till we figure out.
Exactly, because they might be vulnerable.
Yeah, they're susceptible.
Yeah.
All right, so sometimes the New York Times misses the big story.
Oh, really?
Or sometimes they don't even know when they're writing an interesting article.
Yes.
Okay. And so I was looking at an article about a famous composer, not that famous, I guess, Joseph Boulogne, a French composer from the 18th century who was black. Okay. And sometimes people apply the nickname Black Mozart to him, which, you don't like to see that, okay? Yeah. He's, Mozart, you could call Mozart the White Bologna.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, he was a real phenomenon of the time. His father was French, and his mother was African Guadeloupean. And he comes with his parents to Paris from Guadeloupe, and when he's about 10 years old, he gets music lessons, he gets fencing lessons, okay? Ooh. He turns out to be a musician, a composer, he's a concert master, he's also a revolutionary, because this, of course, is, 18th century France. He's largely working for, the aristocracy, but he, also aligns with the revolutionaries himself. So he's a very interesting character that has been somewhat neglected, possibly because of his race. So I'm all for that. I'm all for discovering new and interesting people that were overlooked like that. But one thing that's pretty interesting is his fencing, okay?
His fencing?
His fencing. He was a great fencer. And so they actually, in the New York Times, have a picture of a painting that's in England right now of actually Joseph Boulogne had a title. He was knighted. Chevalier de Saint-Georges is fencing against the Chevalier d'Eon. Now, what's the problem with the picture, guys? What's weird about the picture?
He's white.
It's intergender.
Well, it's hard to tell that Boulogne is black, but
he's fencing against a woman.
He seems to be fencing a woman, and yet her name is Chevalier d'Eon, which sounds like a male name. Yeah. Sounds like a knight, Sir d'Eon.
So what's the explanation?
So what is the explanation? Well, this is. I should mention that the article, the title here is A Neglected Composer, A Unique Legacy. There's several unique legacies going on here. This is a double dose of a doogie. Okay, so it turns out that Chevalier d'Eon was somebody named Charles d'Eon de Beaumont. Okay, And he was born, he's about 10 years older than our buddy Joseph de Boulogne. And he was a spy. He was a diplomat, okay? He was a soldier. He had this amazing life, and somehow the second part of his life, he lives as a woman.
Really?
There's all this, I can't even understand the story. You know, this is the first time I'm hearing about this guy. I'm clueless. And,
or this woman, yeah.
Or this woman, okay. There's all this intrigue. There's all this, he's stationed in London. And then he ends up sort of in trouble with the king, and Louis XV, and then he's blackmailing the king, and then he is banned from France, somehow Louis and he work it out that he can stay in England. Maybe he can come back, but he's got to live as a woman.
He's got to be a lady.
As long as he lives as a woman, he's okay. That sounds like a bizarre result, doesn't it? He says he was born a female but raised as a male so that his father could inherit some legacy. Okay, and there had to be a male heir. He had to provide a male heir. Okay, they actually do some research a little while after he dies, about 10 years after he dies, and they ascertained he was male, but had some female characteristics. So that sounds a little intersex.
Well, I'll just also mention, just for the record, like, we're not trying to misgender Knight Dayon. We just don't know what Chevalier Dayon even wants us to call him or her.
Well, I think we should call him her. Actually, I think I'm being. You're right. I'm making a mistake here. Oh, I should. Refer to
we may not have enough information.
Chevalier as a she, but it's just kind of a fascinating and bizarre story. Again, famous for fencing, and this image is a record of a fencing match in England. The Prince of Wales is in attendance, and it's this. It's a guy fencing against
it looks like a
lady an older lady with a big lace cap and a gown on.
Yeah. No, it looks like a white man fencing a white woman. So the Times has no explanation of that?
They don't even mention it. Okay?
It takes up half the page.
And Chevalier Dayon was very popular. I mean, it's not like people didn't know about her. Okay, and this painting seems to have been commissioned by the Prince of Wales, by Robineau, the artist, etc. And he is prominently figured in the audience there. Yeah. So it's a fascinating story. Also, one other nice point about Boulogne is that it's not clear exactly if he knew Mozart, but there seems to be they were in the same places at similar times. So he was, Boulogne was kind of a superstar. So it would be hard for Mozart not to know of him. Mm. There also are passages, the Times says, in particular pieces that were written by Boulogne before Mozart wrote. Mozart seems to have quoted Boulogne.
Like a reference, musical reference.
In some of his compositions. Yeah. So plagiarism or shout out.
No, I think, in music, I think it's just like
but
a
anyway,
reference. Yeah.
I don't think the Times realized what kind of a fascinating
That's a crazy story.
Yeah, and there's more to learn about the Chevalier Dayon, and there's even a transgender society named after him, the Beaumont, that brings that in. So. Just, in this pile of not interesting stories.
I sense a buddy cop Netflix project coming out of this.
Yeah, that could be a whole show, those two.
There is something in the works about Boulogne, but they don't have many facts is the problem. And Aon has engendered quite a few
she sounds interesting.
Plays. Yeah, so there should be,
All right. Well, So are you saying Aon is actually better known than Boulogne?
That's hard for me to say.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
I'm not. I know nothing about music history, and I know nothing about French history and spy networks.
And we don't have internet.
Yeah.
So.
We don't have internet. That's the key to it. All right. So we're going to wrap up. I wanted to say something about baseball because baseball actually did start since we were last podcasting.
I understand one of the TV broadcasts got more viewers than any.
The first game, the Yankee game against the Nationals, which kicked off the season, was on national TV. I think it was Fox or ESPN. I think it's Fox. And it got the highest rating for a televised game in, what's it, 2012 or something?
I think it was ESPN. I was watching it.
Yeah, it was in 10 years or something like that. But a couple of things. Number one is, as Granger was telling me the details about, the Miami Marlins already have several people have tested positive for COVID. Yeah. Which has led to a postponement of a game that they had against the Phillies, and now a postponement of a game between the Phillies.
No, it's actually the funny thing is they did not postpone the Phillies game. So unfortunately, the Phillies might have gotten sick. So the Phillies' next games against the Yankees are postponed, and the Marlins games against the Orioles in Miami are postponed.
So that's already an issue. And the other problem is the Mets. So the Mets. Mets win their first game, lose their second game because Edwin Diaz gives up a home run with 2 outs in the ninth inning, and which is a horrible reminder of his season last year. The game gets tied, and they lose in extra innings. And then the third game, the rubber game, that is the ESPN game last night. And in contrast to the opening presentation, which was a 5-inning game between the Yankees and the Nationals, which was rained out after 5, but had a huge audience, the Met game set back viewership 100 years perhaps, because by the 5th inning it was 14-1 in favor of the who are they playing again? The Braves. Yes, the Braves. And so the Mets are awful, but again, put a positive spin on that, things are back to normal. So
yeah, nature is healing.
Nature is healing, exactly. So we have that going for us. So that's what we've got here. Our last podcast from our Block Island vacation. We'll be back on the mainland probably when they do the next one. And thanks to Granger and Nico for joining us.
Thank you both.
On the podcast and on the island. And Ms. Granger.
Yeah. This is Tamsen Granger.
And Dan Abuhoff. And we'll see you next week.
Signing off.
Signing off.